Good evening, everybody. I think we're just waiting for people to join us. I can just see the numbers going up gradually, so we'll just give it another half a minute or so, and then we'll get started. So great to see everybody entering the room. We'll just give it another. Okay, we've got to 60. I said to myself, we'll get started when I can see 60 people in the room, which is a fantastic start. So I should introduce myself. My name's Jo Swires. I work for the Foundation for Common Land. And I'm just going to be helping us guide us through the webinar this evening. We've got a really packed and interesting programme, I think, so lots to get through. I'll just do a bit of a housekeeping first, and then we'll crack on with the content. So obviously we're on Zoom. If you're not that familiar with Zoom, you'll see at the bottom of your screen there's a chat function, which we sort of keep in for anything related to tech, or if you need a hand with anything technically. And we've also got a Q&A at the bottom of your screen if you just scroll across the bottom. So if you've got a question about what you're hearing on the webinar or something that you want to ask to one of our panelists or speakers, there's your chance to pop that into the Q&A. And we're going to run through each of the presentations and have the questions answers at the end of the evening. So feel free, as we're going along, to add your questions in there. And if one of us panelists is able to answer it at the time, we will do. If we don't get through your question tonight, hopefully we will. Do feel free to get in touch with us afterwards, and we'll put a contact there if there's anything you specifically want to ask. So that's your place for questions and answers. The whole thing is being recorded. So if you need to leave early, or you join late, or you've got a mate who hasn't been able to make it, but they're signed up, they'll be able to watch the recording afterwards. Or again, if there's something you want to just kind of run through again that you didn't quite catch, then feel free afterwards. We'll send out the recording and you'll be able to see that. I'll just quickly run through who you've got this evening and who we're going to be speaking to, and then we'll get cracked on. So firstly, we're going to have a policy update from Julia Agliambi. And then our second session, we're going to then get stuck into digital tools for common land and talk to people who've used them or who work with them. So the first one we're going to talk about is a carbon calculator and carbon toolkit. And Kira is going to talk to Vicky Slater from Kinnyside Common. Then we're going to move on to farmer-led habitat assessment. And we've got Claire, one of our staff here, talking to Will Dawson and Matthew and Craig Fearon. Then we're going to move on to Owen, who is our SFI Digital App guru, if you like. And he's going to be talking to us about the SFI app. And then swiftly on, we're going to have a little bit about the Upland Farmer Toolkit, which Julie will be able to tell you about. And then at the end of that, we'll all take a little pause and have a chat at the end and try and answer your questions. So that's plenty to be getting on with. I'm going to not waste any more time, hand over to the experts, and I'll ask Julia if you could get yourself, sorry, I've already missed something. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind just filling in that poll. Thanks, Susie, for sharing that. So just so we get an idea of who's here this evening. I'm going too fast, aren't I? I'll give you a minute to fill that in. And then we'll crack on with Julia.
Excellent.
That's great. Thank you. Should we end the poll there? I'm going to stop sharing that now. Oh. There we go. Thank you for everybody for that. I'll hand over to you now, Julia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. It's absolutely fantastic to have so many of you with us this evening as we launch into 2025. And there's a lot going on at the moment, and we just wanted to share with you some of the things that particularly affect common land and moorland. So I hope everyone can see the screen okay there. So I'm just going to firstly, I just think we all need to acknowledge that times are challenging on commons and moorland. And here's a little bit of analysis we've just done, because policy has changed dramatically over the last few years, since 2021, when we've had the phasing out of BPS. And this particular graph is some modelling sort of looking forward. So we have the yellow is BPS, the income from BPS, grey is diversification, orange is agri-environment, and blue is agricultural production. And that's the sort of net profit from each of those cost centres. And we used Defra data and then projected it forward. And as you're all aware, the orange bit, the yellow-orange bit is disappearing, BPS is going out. So it's really important, in terms of looking at your farm businesses, how we can make money, how we can look at ensuring that the agriculture you're doing is as productive and profitable as possible, that the that your agri-environment income, you're looking to maximize that as well. So that just gives you a flavour. It's the purple line, which is the the net farming, the total farm business income for the farm. And we know it's really tough. If we've looked at it, what it equates to in terms of income per hour, and it's quite low. If we look at it's well below the minimum wage at the moment. Probably don't need me to tell you that, but it's just really important when we making the case for supporting farming and farming on common land, because commons are so special and the work you do is absolutely critical to delivering on the government's public goods agenda. So yeah, and they remain uncertain. So the Foundation for Common Land, we run a range of programs and projects, and one of the things we do is engage with government, with Defra. And we this week received a response to our we'd written to Minister Zeichner, Daniel Zeichner, about the sort of key issues that are facing commoners and upland farmers. And these are just quickly the 4 things that we've been looking at, which we feel needed to make the difference. And you can go on our website and read the response from Daniel Zeichner there. We don't feel we've yet got full answers to the questions, but it's good he's listening. And we're hoping that as this new government gets its sort of feet under the desk, they'll be responding to these issues. So the first one is that we would like, in terms of SFI, at the moment you can only do the survey on offline, because commons aren't yet on the rural payments service, and we would like all the actions under the extended moorland offer to be available offline until commons can be accessed on the rural payments service. We'd also like the HLS UELS payment rates to be increased to match the new CS higher tier payments. I think this is really important. Everyone needs to be paid properly, and the HLS rates haven't gone up since 2005. And I heard today from Defra that the ministers are very cognizant of this. They're very aware that this is an issue. So let's hope for some action there. The other thing is that how those of you on HLS rollovers, how those agreements can be adapted. It'd be really great if people feel that they can, if they want to do more and different things, they can transfer into the new countryside stewardship schemes. And finally, our 4th ask was that the capital grant scheme are reopened. So we're really busy making a case. We have members of the team attending meetings regularly. So the areas that are going on at the moment, there's an Uplands Task and Finish group, and Robin Milton, one of our trustees, he's attending that for us, and he's got a meeting tomorrow. There's lots going on there, and also the government is putting together its farming roadmap, and that should come out, we hope, next year sometime. So I just want to say, in terms of a health warning, that everything we're saying today is really based on what the best information we have as of today, the 5th of February. For those who are listening on YouTube later on, it's just to make sure that things do change. So always take advice about your own specific circumstances. One of the big announcements in terms of policy in the last week was on Friday, the government launched a land use framework. So a land use framework is looking strategically at the whole of England and saying what society is looking for: food, they're looking for climate mitigation and carbon sequestration, they're looking for nature, we're looking for access, a whole range of public goods. And they're consulting for the next 12 weeks. And these are some of the maps that are in the annexes. So you can see I picked out the areas with most common. So we've got the north of England, the southwest, and the Shropshire-Herefordshire borders. So those are the areas, and you can see that this deep purple is prevalent in a lot of these areas. So that's high habitat potential, lower food production potential, but in some areas there's also quite a lot of dark green. Where it's dark green, that's got both high habitat potential and high food production potential. So the government is very much looking at how to ensure we can feed the nation and to make sure that delivering on the nature targets and climate targets. There are lots of other maps there, so do take a look. Please do respond, because it's really important that government hears your views on this, because we'll all have different views, and we need to make sure that commons are delivering on multiple outcomes. We know hugely high cultural heritage, very important for grazing livestock, very important for nature, and critical for access. So what have we learned recently? In December, we had the new payment rates for countryside stewardship higher tier. Rather confusingly, the new scheme is called countryside stewardship higher tier. And when some of you have already been in countryside stewardship higher tier for a while, so I'm just calling it version 2. These good new payment rates, unfortunately, don't apply to old countryside stewardship schemes, but there's real potential to get increased payment rates there. We also have the sustainable farming incentive. Currently, commons are going into SFI 23 Moorland. That's an offline process. Really good team at the RPA and who are responsive. And we meet every 3 weeks with the commons team at the RPA. So if you've got any queries, then please do get in touch with us. But do get in touch with them as well, because they're keen to support you. If you're not on a common, then you can apply for SFI 24. That's all digital by default. You go through the Rural Payments Portal, and there you have the survey there, Seymour 1, and also Moorland Extended Offer. And then finally, but not least, and perhaps becoming more significant, is landscape recovery. Because countryside stewardship higher tier version 2 isn't yet available on commons, it's really worthwhile, if you're in an area where landscape recovery is being undertaken, continue the conversations. This is not all about huge landscape change or rewilding. It's very much working with communities, and we're doing some work in Cumbria supporting a project that's looking on 3 commons. And if you're part of the conversation, you can then make an informed choice. It may or may not be right for you, but continue to have the conversations. So as we say, one of the big things we're advocating in Defra is that they do need to get commons onto the online system. We think it's unsatisfactory that we know there are over 100 commons expressed interest in the Moorland Extended Offer, and unfortunately they cannot yet apply for that. So we are regularly making the case. And so here's just, what do we do now? You're transitioning to environmental land management. You may be a no scheme. First thing is at least get some money through the door, enter the SFI survey, that's Moor 1, and that's where you do a survey of 1 point every 10 hectares. If you'd like to use our app, you can, and Owen will tell more about that. But it's a good way to get your, find out who's on your common, making sure you've got your register up to date and getting useful information to plan the future. Also, what we know about the new countryside stewardship higher tier version 2 is that you have to have everything ready in advance. On a common, that means lots of consultation. It may mean getting a section 38 consent. So make sure you're looking at that. So these are really, whether you're on no scheme, whether you're on an HLS rollover or you're on a current CS higher tier, all of these areas, enter SFI, prepare for your new countryside stewardship higher tier, and explore landscape recovery. Your association is really critical, so look after your association. And one of the things we're going to be doing in the next year or so is really looking to support officers of commons associations and administrators to make sure they have the skills that they need in order to manage significant sums of money, which they'll be looking after. Already lots of associations are working well, but we know that there's going to be increased responsibilities going forward. What we don't know at the moment is when the SFI Extended Offer or Countryside Stewardship Higher Tier will open for commons. Countryside Stewardship Higher Tier is only by invitation at the moment. We don't know when, if you're on an existing HLS rollover, when you'll be able to migrate to ELM. And we don't know what the overall agriculture budget after 2026 is. So we know there's 5 billion for 2025 and 2026, but after then we're waiting for spending reviews. So, do get in touch with your MP, do make the strong case for supporting the management of common land and farming going forward. So what can you do now? I'm almost finished. So as I say, just to recap, enter SFI Moorland, look at your farm. As you saw from the initial thing, that the agriculture bit is overall farming, where you take into account all your fixed costs, is still losing money, even despite the great new, the increased payments for beef and good payments for lamb. But look at your fixed and variable costs. Be really sort of tough on yourself and make sure you're being as efficient as possible. If you're interested in CS Higher Tier, apply for grants, the PA1 and PA2 grants. They help you prepare doing the necessary management plans. So I say, consider landscape recovery, create a live register, and we have a template available on our website, and collate all the biodiversity and soils data that you have. We've got lots of resources available to support you. They're both on our website. We also have humans at the end of telephones. We have email addresses, and we have a mobile phone number. So we've got templates. If you're looking to have an internal agreement for SFI Moorland survey, we've got a template available there. We've got templates for live registers, and we're here to help. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julia. That was a whistle-stop tour. Well done. Thank you. So just to say to people, if we're cracking on tonight, we've got lots of content to get through. So do feel free to wait for the recording and look back on things if you want to. If there's anything that you want to follow up on, you can take your time over those slides and have a little think about those. So that was our quick whistle-stop overview of where we're up to with policy. Thank you, Julia, for making that so clear. We're going to move now into our sort of main body of the webinar, if you like, which is our focus on digital tools. And I'm going to pass now, firstly, for our first digital tool, to Kira Booth, who works on the Our Upland Commons project with Foundation for Common Land. And she's going to be chatting to Vicky Slater from Kinnyside Common. So I'll hand over to you two ladies. Thank you.
Thanks, Jo. Right, hi Vicky, thank you for joining us this evening. So Vicky is a commoner on Kinnyside Common, which is in West Lakes, back in 2022 we embarked on a farm carbon toolkit project. So it was led by the farm carbon calculator, and it was. The plan was to create a toolkit that included the commons in it. So as you were part of that, Vicky, we'd really like to hear about your experiences. So, I mean, I guess to start off with was what made you and your family sort of interested in being part of this project? Was there anything specific that kind of drew your attention?
I think we're really lucky that we've got a really forward-thinking set of commoners on Kinnyside. And as a group, they decided that they wanted to, well, we saw that the carbon, they were definitely going to start coming in with the carbon, wanting the carbon calculators, wanting to see where we were. And we wanted to make sure that we were ahead of the game. So we took the opportunity to join with the carbon toolkit, especially with the fact that all the carbon toolkits we'd looked at didn't have the commons on. This was a big thing that made us push to get this one onto, firstly onto our in-buy farms, and then push to get the common land and how we were going to actually put the common into the carbon toolkit calculator. Okay, brilliant. So you'd been looking for something already. There were kind of external factors driving it before this came along. Yeah, definitely. You could see it was coming, and I think it's always best if we can get a baseline on the ground. So we saw what was coming and thought we need to look into it. But the farm carbon toolkit was the one that wanted to help us out with putting the commons onto it, which is what we really need, because the commons are there and they're doing fantastic things, but we need to show that. Yeah, absolutely. So can you tell us a little bit about the process of developing this tool, because it was the first one to include the commons. So just a little bit about actually sort of creating your own footprint, and sort of what the process was for that, whether it was what you went through to sort that out. Yeah, so to start off with, we had to get all of our in-buy land, all of our inputs, all of our outputs, and put them all into, like, we put them all into a spreadsheet, sending them off to the Farm Carbon Toolkit, which to begin with seemed, when we looked at looked at the spreadsheet to put it all in, it was a little bit daunting. Once we started putting the things in, it actually wasn't quite as scary as it first looked, which was fantastic. And it actually made us kind of look deeper into what we were doing on the farm. So for me, it made me look a little bit deeper into the amount of fertilizer we were using, the amount of different, like the amount of fuel we were using, because you tend to just do it. You tend to just use the fuel and not really take a lot of notice on how much is coming onto the farm. And it made me look a little bit more into the outputs, how quick we were getting things to like the stage where they were going off the farm. And then, so putting all that into the calculator, then they came back with a figure for us, which at the time was just a bit of like a figure in the air. So we could look through it, and we were told that we had like 400 tons of carbon to offset, which wasn't bad. I think it was actually quite a good number. So then you can start using the calculator to look for how you can change that, how you can reduce your carbon footprint. But that wasn't included in the commons at the time. So once we put the commons into it, and we had the meeting with Becky Wilson to go through what we'd looked at and put the commons onto it, then it was a case of how do you split it. Well, we there's about, I think there's 14 commoners. We've decided we're just going to split it equally amongst all the commoners, because there's no other way really that we could do it, because of different areas on the common. So then that was incorporated into the calculator as well.
Yeah. And did you find that the flexibility with being part of the development of this tool, the flexibility in terms of Becky and her team kind of, listening to the ideas of whether you split it via, hefts or how many, people had rights on it? Did you find that was really that was good and helpful in that process?
Yeah, they were great. We did it together, which was fantastic. They didn't just do it on their own. We talked a lot. There was a lot of conversations had about the best way to go forward with all of it.
Brilliant. And did you discover, have you made any changes on the farm, or did you discover anything new by going through that process and kind of, start to realize that there can be some kind of easy wins or sort of big changes that could be made, whether you've done them or not, but just sort of that greater understanding?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we first got our report back, I was reading through it and I was like, hang on a minute, we've got no hedges on the report, but we know that we've got hedges on the farm. So it's just things like that. So I was able to then go back onto the calculator, pop all my hedges in, like from the measurements, and that automatically changed it for the better. And then we're now looking into it. Well, through the SFI as well, we're doing all our soil sampling with the organic matter, which again, once we get all the results back for that, we can pop them all into the calculator. And then that should hopefully change for the better as well. So yeah, it's great because when you do something that is going to help your carbon footprint, you can put it straight into that calculator and see how it's affecting it.
Yeah, it's something you're just working on all the time, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's not hard to use. It's very user friendly. So you can, once you've got it set up, it's very user friendly.
Yeah, brilliant. So we've talked before, and I know that you were involved in one of the University of Cumbria's short courses that took place in the autumn last year. So Farming for Net Zero, which was also run by Becky. She was the tutor for that course. Having gone through the process of creating the such a mouthful, the carbon footprint and the commons and everything, did that course give you anything different, anything new that you hadn't done through the project?
Yeah, the course was brilliant because we actually spent a lot of time on the calculator, and there's different tools that come with the calculator. So, for example, I didn't know how they'd put in our cattle, how they'd worked out their carbon footprint, but there's actually calculators that you can put in for when they're on the farm, the weights that they go off the farm, and it works it all out for you. So that was brilliant, and finding that was great through the course. So yeah, and it was mainly through the course that we were able to put some of the common land stuff in ourselves, because up until then it had been all trial and error. So Becky and her team had been putting it in for us, but yeah, working on it ourselves, just sitting and actually doing it and realizing how user friendly it was great.
Brilliant, excellent. So what sort of happened after the course, after doing the project, you and a couple of commoners on Kinniside then embarked on a soil sampling project. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and why you did that? What prompted that?
Yeah, so we got together with we had got a FiPL grant to be able to go out and do some soil sampling on the fell. When Louise Rawlins, that's on the fell with us, she's absolutely crazy about soil. She loves soil, and she's very interested in the biology of soil. And we were kind of trying to tell people that the soils on the fell are great. They're really good. So what we did was we've been out and we've soil sampled different parts of the fell. So we've soil sampled the acid grassland, we've soil sampled where the bracken is, we've soil sampled where the fen is, and we've taken all that back. We've sent that off again to the Carbon Farm Toolkit, and they've analysed all those results for us, looking at the different soils. And Louise has also looked at the biology of the soils, and what she found was fantastic. It was really interesting, with nematodes and things. And so it was really exciting, and it's actually fairly new. Not many soil samples have been taken out on the fell, and we thought that was somewhere we wanted to push forward with.
Yeah, so that prompted sort of as a result of doing the footprint for the common, was the sort of lack of knowledge around the soil and sort of feeling like, well, we've got the opportunity now to learn some more and help feed into it so that you can make your report as accurate as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So we know that there's a lot of good peat out on the fell, but it wasn't included really in the Carbon Farm Toolkit, because obviously they're going on restoration or making things better. So we wanted to show what was out there. So yeah, from what we got back from our Carbon Farm Toolkit, we wanted to go out and show what we've already got. We kind of want a backup plan. We want a baseline of what we have out there.
Yeah, brilliant. That's fantastic. Thank you. And have you got any more plans for the future, or are you just going to have a little bit of a rest now and just enjoy the fact that you've got all of this information, or is there more to come?
No, I think it's an ongoing thing. We're actually going to go back out in the spring and hopefully do some more soil samples just to see if the different times of year will make a difference to what we find. But yeah, it's like an ongoing mission to get to the carbon net zero.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for all of that information, and for everybody else listening. The carbon calculator is available on the Foundation for Common Land website, so we can put the link in the chat shortly. And there's some handy, Becky has created some really useful videos in terms of how to use it. As Vicky said, it's really user friendly. There's a lot of information to input onto it, but once you get sort of past that, there's a lot to do. And I don't know if you've used it, Vicky, but I think the scenario planning tool is an excellent thing to have in there as well, to give you a kind of an idea of what it would look like if you made certain changes and things like that. So yeah, so that's available, and we'll share the link shortly. But yeah, thank you again, Vicky, for sharing all that. It's been really interesting.
Thank you, no problem at all.
Thank you, ladies, and thank you for being so prompt, finishing at 8 o'clock on the dot. That is impressive. Thank you. So we'll pop some links in the chat, if you're interested in the Farm Carbon Toolkit more generally and the carbon calculator, or if you're interested in soils in particular, and learning a bit more about those. We've got some. We'll put some links in there so you can have a look at that. So that's great. We're going to move swiftly on because we've got lots of people lined up in our little green room waiting to come onto the stage, as it were. So I'm going to pass now to Claire, who is going to be chatting to Will Dawson from Ingleborough and Matthew and Craig Fearon from Borrowdale. I'll pass to you guys.
Hi, Jo. Thanks very much. I'm Claire Braben. I'm the Foundation for Common Land Officer over in the Dales. And I've invited both William Dawson and Craig and Matthew Fearon to talk about the farmer-led habitat assessment that was done on both commons. The farmer-led habitat project started from different points. Over in the Dales, it began from the Yorkshire Dales National Park report with the farm conservation team.
Claire, so you're in presenter mode.
Oh, forgive me. Hang on a second. There we are.
Brilliant, thanks.
So it's started, thank you, Judy, that's completely thrown me now. Yeah, so it started with over in Ingleborough back in 2022 with the commoners looking at 3 particular habitats on Ingleborough, very specific to the HLS agreements. And the farm conservation team worked with farmers there to identify the specifics about those habitats. And then over a course of time, over in the lakes, then it started over there a bit later, looking at habitats over there as well, but on a slightly different view, from a slightly different viewpoint. So what we were looking at was, this is not working now, bear with me. There we are. So on Ingleborough, we had the project was a complete trial again, and was looking at increasing the commoners' knowledge and ability to carry out habitat monitoring, and looking at how elms could progress with extra data with the farmers, so that there was a real, on knowledge and understanding leading to better management. And over on the lakes, it became a common understanding project, which was very, very similar. So it was about understanding mapping of commons for public goods through Defra, and again enabled commoners a better understanding of what was there for habitats, to deliver the SFI as well through farmer-led habitat assessment, which we'll talk about in a bit, and again increase the commoners' ability to have better conversations with stakeholders and other people that might be coming onto the land, enable them to have a little bit more knowledge and power when having those conversations, which I know we'll talk about later too. So, gentlemen, over to you. William, can you give us a little bit of background on your beginning of the project?
Yeah, so we started it a few years ago. I quite like actually how you described it as a trial. I thought that was quite good, because that is a word that came to mind actually at one point. We did it with the national park, so they trained us sort of over a couple of years, really. We did it quite slowly at the start, because we were sort of just deciding on how we were going to do it, what we were going to look at, certain plants that we maybe were thinking that would be more easy to identify, because we were amateurs. And it sort of just went from there. We gauged the sort of the willingness of the farmers to get involved. And I think it was okay, really, sort of half, which was pretty good, because they can be quite a stubborn bunch, but I think they got going with it eventually, and we just went from there, really.
Excellent. And Matthew and Craig, hi Craig. How about yourselves? How did it start over in the lakes for you both?
I think we're already looking at the SFI on our common. So this was kind of just when the Farmer Network got involved and said we could also look at this habitat assessment as well. It seemed like a good idea, because as a common we'd already been looking at trying to get some kind of survey done, whether we like sourced that out or understanding what was on the common better ourselves, just to have kind of like a record of this time what it is, because I think before that we knew that there wasn't a very good record of the common, so it seemed, I think everybody was quite in favour of doing this would be a good idea for the common.
Okay, so you all were already in SFI and were thinking about how to link it with that surveying.
Yeah. So when the Farmer Network kind of came along and said that you could add this to your SFI, it seemed like a good idea.
We're already going out and doing the survey anyway, so it was just a case of doing a few more questions, and yeah, it's quite easy, really.
No, that's great. And I know that that's not kind of the way it happened over in Ingleborough, but it ended up being on the same platform, didn't it? Because we had difficulty with a bit of technology in the start, but then we decided that, same as you guys, that actually it would be good to stick it on to the SFI merging app as well. William, do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, because when we started, we talked about doing it on paper, and then Epi Collect, we went to that, and that was a bit of a nightmare, really, wasn't it? I think everybody involved sort of lost the will to live, and I think if it had left to that, it would have stopped where it started, really. So yeah, we went on to merging maps when we were doing SFI as well. We just put the questions on a different layer, and it was easy. You're there doing the SFI, so you can just do the farm-led habitat assessment stuff at the same time. And if you like, then you can pretend you're getting paid for both. So it worked quite well.
Always good when you get paid, eh?
Yeah.
But what were your expectations? So when you, obviously with SFI, we knew that it was going to be a select amount of drop-down boxes, and we knew it was going to look at peat and various habitats. But what were your expectations on linking the farmer-led habitat assessment as well? What do you think it would have, that it's kind of added to your process?
I think it's more the knowledge that it gives you and the ability it has of sort of enlarging your understanding of maybe what other groups that are involved with the commons are thinking about the future of the commons. Because I think it's not always easy to talk to Natural England. We don't always want to be involved with Natural England. Often if they come to a meeting, it puts a lot of farmers' backs up, they shut down. But if we have this information, then that gives us a bit more of a conversation with them, really. And it gives us evidence that we are managing things in quite a good way, or yes, there's some things that we could do better. So I think it's just about, it's similar to SFI, but it's much more in depth.
Excellent. Would you agree, Matthew and Craig? I know you kind of had an ecologist on Derwent, didn't you, to kind of go through some of that assessment?
Yeah, definitely would agree, because there's very little information on how the commons improved. So if we can get all this information gathered up, and then we've actually got some evidence for ourselves, so it should be really good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And which one of you wants to go through the little habitat booklet? I've got some slides here. So I don't know whether you can see my screen there, but I've got the Lake District one up, just to kind of
a lifesaver, to be fair.
Explain, Craig, why is it a lifesaver?
Because I have absolutely no idea what I'm looking at. Right, when I went up to the fair, like, even I probably know a little bit, but most of the plants and that, I just, you just look at them and think, oh, there's a plant, that's nice. But then when you're actually looking and you know what they're called by looking in the book and all that sort of stuff, it's actually really interesting, and you could make a good detailed record.
Mm-hmm. So this was a little booklet that's been created for both Derwent, Kinderside and Ingleborough now, and it's completely waterproof, little pocket-sized book, and it goes through step by step, as Craig's described, each of the habitats that you're likely to find on your individual common. So it can be completely designed for specific areas, and it's got this really handy little flow chart in it as well, which can turn out to be quite large if you've got a number of different habitats. And it sort of goes through step by step to help you understand what you're looking at. As Craig says, that's not easy all the time. And here's a last one of the Ingleborough one. So that gives you a little bit of a flavour of some of the pretty pictures, because again, that's easier, isn't it, when we're looking at a picture rather than some words on a page. And it is completely waterproof, which is absolutely fantastic. And yeah, what did the ecologist say when you were kind of going up there and talking about habitats and things? Were you quite surprised in their reaction, or?
Yeah, I think it's been, so a few points were also checked by kind of the ecologist David. He went out and did them separately, so to gauge how well we were doing it. And I think we surprised ourselves of in some cases that we were pretty good at doing it. Mainly because of this booklet, it was really easy to see what sort of habitat we were in and what sort of species we could expect in that habitat. And a lot of the plants and stuff that we're recording, it was things you see all the time, but you don't really necessarily know what you're looking at. So to be able to identify them now and see what condition things are in, it's good. It's give us a bit more knowledge on what the habitats assessment, what the habitat condition is like on the film.
And you think that's given a bit more of empowerment to the other commoners as well, who might not have necessarily done the survey?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Do you mean
all the common?
Sorry, Karen.
No, go on, Craig.
Do you mean, are you talking about our common or farmers?
Yeah, well, anybody's, sort of give it a little bit more of that bit of knowledge, a bit more power for them to kind of not just understand what they're looking at, but to feel more confident in identifying those.
On our common, all the farmers mostly did their own surveying, so that was quite good.
Oh, that's good. And I was same with you, William, I think, wasn't it? You did. I think it was yourself and Krista who did a lot, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think there was about 8 of us all together that started, and I think maybe 6 of us finished. So yeah, but we just shared them out
You lost a few on the way.
people, yeah, exactly. And not everybody wanted to do the farmer-led habitat stuff. They maybe just did the SFI, but I think 4 people did both, so that's all right actually. I thought that was once we got whittled down, but yeah.
No, that's great. And then just because we're a bit short of time, what do you think has been the highlight then of the project for you all?
For me, I think it was when Natural England came to do the assessment on Ingleborough limestone pavement in the summer. I went up with them, fraternized with them. It was terrible, but it was all right. And I was able to talk on the same level as some of them. And obviously, some of them are ecologists that know Latin binomials off by heart and things like that, but they just use that to sort of keep you at a distance. But no, it was quite good that way.
That's excellent. So after that, you kind of felt that you could tackle anything after speaking to Natural England, and you're up there on your own as well, I hear. And there were 25 of them.
There was 25 of them, and one of just me represented the farmers. I think it was
that's incredible.
Dry time in hay time or something, so everybody else was busy.
So you got it.
Yeah.
And yourselves, Matthew, Craig, what's been the highlight for you?
I think that we haven't been able to go on the common with Natural England yet since we've done the surveying, but I think that will be the main advantage of doing it, because we'll have such a better understanding of what we're looking at.
I think it was good to get on the fell. Obviously, we're on the fell a lot, gathering that kind of thing, but actually having to go to the set points and then really look at what's there. It's given me a much better understanding of what is there and things that I wouldn't have noticed already. So I think it'll be quite good in a couple of years' time if we keep on doing it every year to get built up a better map of all the different habitats of what is there, because we've only done it every 10 hectares. So to be able to go and do a different point next year and split that 10 hectares up, it'll give us a much better map of the common. Yeah,
absolutely. Excellent. And I know we've got a bit of work to do on Ingleborough to add even more habitats as well. So it's all part of the learning process, but it's really, really great. And those little booklets are absolutely fantastic. It really kind of adds a real impact to doing that assessment to make things a little easier. But thank you very much for your time, gentlemen. I'll pass you back to Joe now. And I really appreciate that. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think you should be able to hear me now. Yeah. Am I unmuted? I'm unmuted. So thank you, Claire. Thank you, Craig and Matthew and William, for that. That's really interesting. And that was the farmer-led habitat assessment, which it sounds like has had, lots of interesting sort of offshoots, but some really interesting work, and more than anything, just that kind of helping to understand and maybe look at the common from few different aspects and have more confidence in being able to kind of identify what's out there. So thanks for sharing your insights into that. We are doing so well on time. I'm so impressed by everybody. So we're now on 8:15 and we are moving on to our next presentation, and we've got Owen, who works for the Foundation for Common Land on the SFI Digital App. So I'll pass to you now, Owen. It's good to see you. Thank you. And over to you. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm just gonna try and share my screen. Just give me a shout if people can see that.
Yeah, I can see that. You probably just need to go into your slideshow. That's great.
There we go. Hopefully that's showing properly for everybody. Yes, thank you, everybody.
It's got sorry, Owen, it's gone back to you kind of seeing all the slides down one side. Just need to get it into presentation mode if you can.
Is that it?
Yeah, perfect.
Ah, brilliant. Right.
Marvellous, thanks.
Long time since I've been on Zoom, so apologies, everybody. Right, okay, thank you. And thank you to the guys on previously. They've done a great job introducing some of the habitat stuff we've been doing as well with the app, so that's fantastic. I'm going to focus, I guess, a little bit more on the Moor 1 and how the digital tool can hopefully help to allow you to do that. So it's going to be a very brief run through of just a little bit about SFI to start with. I'm not sure, you know, what people's knowledge levels are, and then we'll move into the kind of digital app and what we can do with that. As probably introduced, my name's Owen. I'm kind of the digital tool coordinator for the foundation, and I work with myself and my colleague Andrew, helping people to do their surveys, basically. So the assessment itself, Moor 1 or C Moor 1, depending on what you're in, as we've kind of people have touched on a little bit previously, the main object is that you have to survey a point in every 10 hectares of the land that you've got. At each point, you need to do a basic kind of soil sample test or a depth test. And then you've got a series of questions that have been set to ask, really in terms of categories, things about carbon and slowing the flow and keeping water and all that sort of stuff. So that's the sort of basic requirement. And we'll go on to talk a little bit about how the digital app, we've tried to make that as easy as possible, really. Because actually that could be quite a complicated ask. You know, there's actually quite a lot to it. I don't know if people are familiar too much with SFI, but Moor 1, it's available on common and non-common land. You can kind of see the payments rates there. You get your standard rate, but then also you get a common supplement. So naturally, you know, when you look at 1,000 hectare common, actually, you know, it's reasonable chunk of money. It's, you know, it's not a bad chunk of money for what you have to do, as long as it can be simple and as long as it's, you know, not too time consuming. So hopefully that's what we've done in terms of the digital tool, is to try and make this process as easy for people as possible, and actually relatively low cost, because, you know, within that sort of 10 or 18 pounds a hectare that you're getting, we're only we work on a kind of 60p per hectare charge. So we're only taking the smallest slice that we can to be able to provide the service. Little bit of history. So obviously when the idea of Moor 1 came about, you know, this idea that we wanted people to go out and do surveying, and there was going to be these questions that people needed to ask, but there wasn't really a sort of idea of how people were going to do that. So there was a sort of test and trial, which the foundation was involved with, and looked at different options. And as Will kind of highlighted when talking about the habitat survey, actually the logistics of doing it on paper, it's not very easy to do, going out onto the moor with your measuring tool and some kind of, you know, map or a GPS device and a load of paper, questionnaires and a pen, you know, in the rain and the wind. That, you know, that's not actually very effective. So one of the things that the FCL did in collaboration with Land App was to design a mobile app, something that actually, you know, all of us have got a mobile phone, or most of us have, something you've got in your pocket anyway. Could we actually have it that all of the things you need to do to complete your Moor 1 could be on there? So they set up a tool. It was been demoed and trialed in Cumbria and Dartmoor, and adapted and very much built around collaborating with land managers and farmers to design something that actually worked for you and was usable. So we got it, we launched it almost 2 years ago now. In the last 2 years, so far it's been used, or is being used, on 136,000 hectares of moorland. So, and you know, it's working well. You know, it really has. In the last sort of 8 or 9 months, it's really scaled up as well. You know, so we're operating at quite high capacity, and the system's working, I think, really, you know, really effectively for people. I've talked about the fact that it's available on common and non-common lands. We work with both. You know, we've decided that actually, you know, even though we're the foundation for common land, actually a lot of commoners also have non-common moorlands, you know, privately owned, and actually we're supporting them as well to be able to use the service. So that's the sort of history. What I want to do is just talk a little bit about how the digital tool works and how hopefully it simplifies things for you. So the first thing we do is we can create a digital map on land of your moorland, whether that be your common or your private moorland. And we've got a number of different ways of doing that, and we can actually help support you to do that for yourself as well. So what we can do very quickly again is move away from having to work on paper maps or, you know, RPA maps that you've had sent out. We can digitalize it. We then allows us to chop that up. So this is just an example. This isn't a real common, you know, hence the strange shape. This is just a trial example, but we can chop it up. The logic behind this is that we can have, you know, we can, if you've got numerous commoners, you know, or, you know, with different stints or hefts on the common who want to get involved, we can chop it up so everyone has their own bit. So everyone's, you know, can take part in the same survey at the same time, but they've all got designated their own little bit. Hence, we kind of chop it up and name it and color it in this way. So simplifying that process of actually getting your land mapped, but also getting it broken up so it's usable for everybody. So that's a useful, very, you know, quite quick and simple thing to do digitally rather than working analog on paper. What we'll then do is turn that into a mobile app, something you can use on your phone. So this is an example of a survey. You can see what we've done. We've applied the grid. So this green grid is your 10-hectare grid. So we've automatically chopped it up into 10-hectare pieces. That allows us to then randomly assign a point for each 10 hectares. So you know you're compliant, you're doing what's required, and you can see it's color coded as well. So each of those areas that we saw previously can then be assigned their own colored dots. So everyone who's taking part, if there's 10 of you taking part, for example, you all know you've got your designated area, you've got your dots, those are the ones that you can go and survey. You then go out, you use your phone, you use your GPS that's on your phone, so you don't need to take out a separate GPS unit, take it out, use the GPS that guides you to your point, and you've selected a point, GPS on the phone guides you to it. You can see that on the right-hand side, you're finding a specific point. And then when you get there, you've got those questions. So when we were talking about, you know, the second requirement is you go out, you've got to survey that 1 in 10 hectare point. But then when you've got there, you've got a selection of questions to answer. And as a rote, depending on the answers you give to questions, you then have to answer other questions. And again, rather than having sheets and sheets and sheets of paper, what we've done is done it as a drop-down menu on your phone. So you just work through systematically answering from the top down. Depending on the questions that you answer, it will open up any other questions you have to ask. They're multiple choice drop down. So you just click through, answer your questions, run through. You take a photo on your phone, which again is a record of the fact that you've done it. So then, you know, you tick the little tick you can see on the top there, which saves it onto your phone. And that is your survey for that point complete, safe, stored on your phone, done. You can also, on the right-hand side, you can see you can actually move the points as well because they're randomly generated. If they happen to be unsafe or they're in a space that you can't get to, you can do a manual move of the point. So, you know, it's quite flexible. We've tried to build in some kind of safety in there that we're not sending you off into crazy places to try and kind of hunt for points. You can adapt accordingly. So that's kind of how it works. And then what do we do with it? So again, the second part and the advantage, I suppose, of using a digital app is actually we can very quickly take all of that data, because you can imagine, you know, if we've got a 3,000, 4,000 hectare common, we're generating 300 or 400 points. Each one of those points has got all the answers to the questions, you know, quite a lot of data attached to it. You'll see on the right-hand side, that's a completed survey. All the points have gone blue. So once you've completed them, you'll know because they've turned to this dark blue color. What we can then do is we download those off of your system, and we can then run those through. We've got kind of a little algorithm that we run it through to generate your outputs. And that comes in a couple of forms. First thing that we produce is an RPA compliant set of reporting. So you can see from this, it's very dry. It's just every single point that you've done, it's longitude, it's latitude, it's grid reference, all the answers to the questions. It's got the link to the photo that you've taken. And that's the thing that if the RPA asks to see that you've been compliant and you found you've actually completed your Moor1 survey, you can just send this to them. It's in an Excel file, it sits on your computer, you email it to them. That shows compliance. So that's fine. but not necessarily hugely useful. What we also do is generate a set of mapping. So on the top right here, you can see this is a mapping, and it maps some of the key questions or answers to the questions. So we will map things like what your ground cover is, if there's any erosion levels, vegetative roughness, soil type. It's just an attempt really to kind of give you a map that visualizes the data you're collecting. So potentially, at least it could provide a resource that you can actually maybe start to identify where there might be areas that you could look at improvement, or that you could make changes, because that is part of the Moor 1 compliance. You need to show that you're thinking about potentially what that data means. Have you got areas that you've got a bit of you've got bare peat, you've got erosion, or you've got areas that there may be actually hard grazed and the roughness has gone. It's just starting to allow you to think about that and visualizing it and making it a little bit easier. So again, very useful and easy to do digitally, rather than trying to do that. Imagine trying to draw that on to a map, with colouring pencils. Very briefly, as I think I've got a couple of minutes left, the future, we're working to continue to simplify and expand the way that the app works, so that we can get as many people as possible using it for their Moor 1. As the guys previously were talking about, we've been trialling the farmer-led habitat assessment and integrating that as part of it. So when you're doing your SFI, you could also be doing a habitat survey. And we're looking to expand that trial this year. So if there are people on the call who are interested in trialing a habitat survey as part of if they are doing their SFI, get in contact, let us know, because we'd be interested in supporting you in that. And yeah, just this is example of the habitat survey that the guys were talking about. Again, drop down menu on your phone, answer some quick questions. The same sort of process, again, trying to simplify that process and make it as easy to use as possible. And again, this is the sort of thing that we'll be generating. This is an example of the sort of mapping. So in the way that we mapped your SFI, we can also do a digital mapping of your habitat. So hopefully you'll start to generate a map of your common or of your more private moorland that can show you actually what habitats you're seeing, and you start to get a sense of what might be going on in areas of your moorland. And again, something that you can be taking to your discussions with Natural England, something that you can start to maybe use as an evidence base in terms of understanding what you might have with you. And very, very finally, briefly, if you need more information, go to our website, which the link I think has been put in the chat. There's loads of resources there in terms of supporting you in terms of SFI, particularly in terms of commons, with some of the additional needs, things that you'll have to do. There is a registration of interest form on there. If you are interested, please fill that in, and that will ping through to us with all your information, and we can review it and kind of see where you are and offer you any advice, or direction in terms of anything you might need to do before we can get you going. And then for just sort of general inquiries and bits and bobs, that's an email. Feel free to drop us an email through, and one of the digital app team will get back to you and hopefully be able to answer your questions. And I think that is me about on time. I'm going to stop sharing there.
That is brilliant. Thank you, and thanks again for being so on time. And you've actually answered a question that I was going to ask, which is even better, which was around what happens next with the farmer-led habitat assessment. So there's the answer to that. If you are interested and you picked up on William and Craig and Matthew, what they were talking about earlier, and are interested in learning a bit more about that or having a go yourself, do get in touch with us. I think we're interested to, again, continue with that trial and learn more and think about how we can develop that farmer-led habitat assessment. So if that is of interest, do get in touch. That is great. Thank you. Okay, we've got one more presentation. As we're going along, I'm popping one or two links. And I don't know, I've put in the SFI, a link to where to find out more about the SFI app. And there's also a link there to the Common Land Toolkit on the Foundation for Common Land website, which has got all sorts of things in about live registers and templates and just general advice about all useful things, that are, especially around commons governance, that's of interest, take a look at that, and we'll pop in the carbon toolkit and the carbon calculator links as well. One more to come, and we'll put in the link to that too, which is the Upland Farmer Toolkit, which Julia is going to give us a quick whistle-stop tour of, which you might hopefully find useful. I think you will. And then we'll open up to questions after that. So final presentation, I'll pass back to you. Julia, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jo. And apologies, people have to hear from me twice today. So hopefully you can see that. So this is a project that was started by the Food Farming and Countryside Commission with FiPL funding from the Lake District FiPL board. And what we were thinking is, you know, I was sort of reflecting with a whole load of other colleagues and farmers about the challenge of mitigating the loss of BPS. And we thought, well, you know, how can we provide some support so that people in the evening at home or over lunch can easily say, well, this is the situation on my farm. How could I improve things? So that's what our intention was. And we've set up this website called Upland Farmer Toolkit, and there's a whole range of resources on there. You can see at the top, you can choose whether you're a farmer or advisor. I'll just show you a little bit a tour of some of the resources that are available there. It's now been adopted by the Foundation for Common Land with funding from our Upland Commons for this year, and then we're working with Pasture for Life, and they're looking at how they can take it forward, and they've been doing some outreach events there. I noticed there's one written up in the Cumberland Westmoreland Herald last week on East Fell side, and there've been events in other parts of the country as well. So if you hear one that's going on, do go along and have a look and get involved. One of the key things is about, you know, how can we help ourselves? We know that ELM has been rather slow in its rolling out. So one of the process really is looking at our farming and how can we make that as efficient as possible. So there's a calculator where you can put in the data about your farm, your cattle, how long it takes to finish, what feed you're giving them, what your costs are, and look about how you can look to improve that and where you can make most returns from your cattle. We then we have a similar one for you efficiency as well. So there's one for cattle, one for you. We also have an SFI CS calculator. So what we've done here is that if you go on gov.uk, there are an awful lot of options available, but not all of them are relevant to the uplands. So this is very much focusing on the options that are suitable for the uplands. What we do is when you open up the calculator, it tells you, how long that option will last for, and it gives you the name of it, and where it has the words underlined, you can click on that and it will take you to the relevant prescriptions on gov.uk. So those links we're keeping up to date and making sure that information's available. If you notice anything's wrong with the with the links or anything like that, please get in touch with us. So you put in the number of hectares you've got, or the number of meters, if it's hedgerows and things like, or stone walls, and then the payments there of how much per hectare or per meter, and it gives you a total value, and it will add up at the bottom how much you can make. Because if any of you've been on rural payments, it doesn't really give you all that money side part of it till the end. So this is a way of testing out before you go on rural payments and seeing what's going to work for your farm. In addition to the calculators, we also have information here on an information hub, and there are all sorts of different things around farm business, around managing on common land, on managing animal health. So there's a lot of information around there on mental health and well-being. So we try and cover a huge range of topics there, and links to other things. So if you're needing support, there are links for support as well. Diversification is another area that we look at. So that's the information hub. And so it's just to make you aware that we have that Upland Farmer Toolkit. There's the link to it, and please do use it. Do give us feedback, and we're really keen to make sure it's just another tool that we're making available for you to use And I think that's all from me for the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julia. That's great. So that's another tool for you to explore. We've popped the link to that in the chat. I can't put it in the Q&A because I can't ask myself a question. So if you go and have a look in the chat, you'll find those links. Okay, that is brilliant. So we've got about 15 minutes now where we can have a look at some of your questions. So I am going to dive into the Q&A. I don't know if the person behind Kinga or Susie, whether you could maybe bring up our panelists, and because I think the questions will hopefully, I mean, I don't think I'll be able to answer most of them. I'll be passing them on to the people who are much better qualified to answer than me. So we'll kind of farm those out between us. So I'm going to kick off with the first question, which I think might have been answered, but I don't know if anybody else has got an update on this. Ian Porter, thank you, Ian, for your question. Was just to ask whether anybody has heard any more updates about landscape recovery round 3 and potential launch dates. I know there's nothing online or not anything on the Defra website, and Chris thinks that the round 1 has had an extension until June this year. I don't know if any of us have got any more updates on that. If anybody else has heard anything, don't know if you have, Julia.
Well, there are quite a few people who are preparing, I know, for round 3. So I think people are hopeful, but that's people preparing on spec. So I know that Craig, who's on, he had a visit, new Craig, where there were people looking at whether we'd have one on looking at the Borrowdale area. So there are lots of people looking at the potential for landscape recovery. I think the government may be waiting till after the spending review. We know that there's a spending review in June, and we're not sure how many announcements are going to be before then. But the thing is, if you do look at doing landscape recovery, the work won't be wasted because you can always use it to go into countryside stewardship higher tier. So you can look at what was happening in the past. So I think it's something to keep an eye on. But do learn from other landscape recovery development phases. Just to be clear, there aren't any landscape recovery agreements or running at the moment. They've all been in their development phase. I think there's one that may be just about to start, but on the whole, they're all still in their development phase.
Development phase, yeah. I don't know if you want to add anything, Craig, to that in terms of what you might have been looking at or thinking about from what Julia said.
Yeah, it was more just an initial discussion, really, just to see. It was more just to gauge interest in the farmers in the valley, really, more than actually specifics of it. So there was no information on when it was kind of opening up. They did talk about that there'd be, if you decided you wanted to go into developing it, it would be a 2-stage development, a 2-year development sort of phase before you actually went into the scheme. So obviously it's a 20-year scheme, so you need a long time to prepare it so you get it right.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
So I suppose that's the big takeaway, isn't it? There's a lot of work to go in to prepare for it, and if you're thinking about it, probably good to start those discussions rather than sort of wait for the date. Don't feel like you need to wait for the date to launch it. If you're interested, maybe start thinking about it now. Thanks for that one. So I think we've answered that one. The next one, I think you guys maybe started to answer it when I'm going back to the farm-led habitat assessment discussion, I think, from an anonymous, Mr. or Mrs. Anonymous. Thank you for yours. So this is just a question around whether you feel more involved with the heritage of the commons after being involved in using surveys and tools. And I guess that would apply to you as well, Vicky. I know you said, Matthew, that you often now, when you're out and about on the common, when you go for that different reason, you sort of look at it in a different way than just kind of focusing on when you're working with the sheep. But is there anything else you sort of have picked up, or do you feel more involved with the general heritage of the common after using some of these tools?
I don't know about the heritage, but like you say, it's good to understand what was up there a bit more. It's good that all the farmers are working together to get all that done. So that was quite good that the whole common, everyone on the common's got a better understanding as well. And most people, like Craig said, did do it themselves. So we all sort of got involved in it, so that was good to do that.
Yeah, it's not just one person, it's like a good bunch of you who've had a go at it. Yeah. That's anything from you, Vicky, on that? Just anything in terms of how you sort of think about your common differently, or?
Yeah, no, it was fab to get. We've done it as a group, so I think there was 8 of us went out and we did the merging maps and the points, and it was great working as a team to get them. And you look at it in a whole different way. And I went up with my family. We took my daughter and my son came up with me. We went out for a nice walk out and looked at the you look more at the flowers, you look more at what's on the ground. You definitely feel like you're more involved with the common when you're doing things like this.
Yeah, that is great to hear. Thank you. So that's that one, I think. And then the next one, this is from a guest we have, a participant from Ireland. Thank you for joining us. So the question is, what incentive is being offered to the shareholders to improve the habitats on the commonage under SFI? So we've talked a lot about surveys tonight, but sort of moving on from that, does anybody want to answer that one in terms of habitat improvements under SFI, sort of beyond surveys and so on, for our friend in Ireland?
I think on the SFI on the commons, it's just a surveying really, so you know what schemes you can maybe get into in the future. I'm not really sure.
So it's kind of a step towards that habitat improvement in terms of having better knowledge about what's there and what the opportunities are, I guess. Does anybody else have anything to add to that? Owen, do you want to say anything?
No, I think that's it. At the minute, it's to undertake the survey, and I say with the hope that when the other potential extended offers become available, you know, you're in a position to take that, and also I guess to even think about other schemes, you know, and how it might feed into other schemes. But really, yeah, at the minute there's enough. We're all sort of waiting really to see what will become available and when it will become available. But at the minute it's a survey only. Yeah.
Yeah, that's because this is because I was saying earlier, Joe, that the SFI isn't the extended offer isn't available on commons in the future. So it's a bit confusing. When we talk about SFI on this webinar, we're just talking really about the Moorland Survey app, so the Moor One offer. And it is very, very frustrating. But in the future, yes, we hope there will be that incentive.
Yeah. So that next question sort of ties into that. When that does start to happen, when there are sort of options being enacted to do more to improve habitat, you know, having the systems in place to be able to do that in terms of governance, there's a question around that. Yeah, I guess that comes a bit later. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've had other webinars where we've spoken about governance. So today's really we've been focusing on the digital tools, but they're quite complex systems of governance. And if you look on our the Common Land Toolkit, we've got sections on governance, haven't we, Joe? Where we have.
And also, if you want to look on our YouTube channel, we've got all these webinar recordings of these webinars, and there will be one on governance. So if that floats your boat, and you would like to spend an evening, I'm sure a fascinating evening, watching a webinar about commons governance, you will find one on our YouTube channel if that's of interest. We can also we'll put that link in the chat as well. Okay, thank you.
Can I just say, Joe, it's worth saying that in order to do the SFI survey, you do need to have a single business entity, and you do need to have consulted with everybody. So it's the law that you have, you know, the administrative rules to be compliant. You need to have contacted everybody with a legal interest in the common, and you need to have set up an internal agreement. So the Commons Association, it's only the Commons Association that can go in, and they need to make sure that they've done those steps. So governance is part of the survey, and you have to tick a declaration to say you've done that. If you need support on that, we can't do it for you, but we can provide signposting and guidance. So do a message to sfi@foundationforcommonland.org.uk, and we'll provide as much support as we can.
Thank you, Julia. So yeah, if there's things you think you probably need to do in order to be ready to go into that, to start doing the SFI service, there's boxes that you need to tick, there's things that you need to do in terms of getting an agreement, having the single entity set up, and so on. So thanks. Susie's just popped in the link to the YouTube channel with a whole ream of other webinars on various topics if you're interested in having a look at that. Okay. Nikki, thank you. You've got a question around hedgerows. I don't know if others can see that. I'll read out Nikki's question if anybody wants to have a pop at this one. I used the Healthy Hedgerows app for the SFI hedgerow surveys, which were good, but the hedgerows weren't really the same as what we have. Do we think our SFI app would cover that better? I'm looking at you, Owen. I guess we don't know much about. We haven't got the hedgerows in front of us, but
No, I was worried you were going to look at me for that one. Currently, no, we just operate purely in delivering something that delivers the Moor 1 option in the uplands.
Yeah.
I think that whole habitat surveying, digital surveying, both with ourselves and people like the Land App, is getting better, but it's very much in its infancy. So I think it will get better, but yeah, there's absolutely nothing that we could do in relation to that at the minute.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So thanks for that question. Not at the moment, thank you. Okay, so now we're moving on to a question from Daisy Gill, thank you, about bracken. We have lots of conversations at Foundation for Common Land about bracken, so I think we might be able to do something with this, or at least have a chat about it. Okay, I'm sure others can read it too. And it may be more of a question for Defra, Daisy, but we'll have a little look at it, shall we? Okay, so interesting to know the take on bracken as an invasive species. So yeah, in the SFI reports for your farm, high bracken coverage denoted already providing a public good. But yeah, just thinking about the fact that bracken can take over the moorland plant species, it's hard to get rid of, etc. Does anybody want to say any? I mean, we've done various bits of work on different commons on bracken management, haven't we? I don't know if anybody wants to say a little bit more about that.
Kira's been
Kira's maybe our bracken guru.
Craig and
if we have such a thing.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, thank you, Kira. Yeah, we can hear you. Maybe just tell us a little bit more about some of the work you've been doing.
Yeah, well, Craig and Matthew might want to jump in really, because they're the ones actually doing the doing. But we've purchased a bracken cutter for Derwent Common. Across a couple of years, they've had been able to cut on some areas, and it's showing a big difference. But what we're working on at the moment is trying to get a management plan created so that we can apply to get cutting permissions a bit earlier, and to kind of help with that, we've been looking at lots of different aspects of the common, so things like bird surveys, butterflies, just the various habitats that are all involved, and sort of the benefits of being able to do that. So it's a long process, and can be slightly complicated at times, but we're working well with the landowners and both the land agent who's supporting us in all of this. So I feel like we're getting close to the end now, which is good. Yeah, so I don't know if Matthew or Craig, you want to kind of chip in on what your experience of that has been as well.
Yeah, we're on a bit of a war against bracken. We're quite covered in bracken on quite a lot of the common. So we've got this bracken cutter. And like you say, it's about trying to identify areas and look at the different bird life and do bird surveys and the butterfly surveys and get permission to cut these areas. Sort of at the minute we can cut anything after the 31st of July, but we're trying to get that a bit earlier in some places so we can cut it or kill it more effectively. But where we have done it, it's made a massive difference to the total grazing that we've got on the fell. So rather than the pressure of the sheep being on more like that heavy moorland are coming down into the grassy bits underneath the bracken. So it's been really good to get the bracken cut up there.
That is just on the triple SI part of the common where you need permission. So if you're not on a triple SI, you can cut anytime without permission.
Yeah, that's a good point, worth noting. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Craig, Matthew and Kira. Thanks. We'll put you on the spot a bit there, but I don't know if we've fully answered your question, Daisy, but we've certainly given you hopefully a little insight into some of the work that we've been doing on one of the commons at Derwent. So yeah, thanks for that. Okay, we've got a couple more questions and then we'll start to wrap up. So this might be another one for you, Owen. I think your answer might be, well, it'll depend, but we can give it a go. So the question is around how many 10 hectare plots would you expect the average farmer to be able to survey and load to the app per hour.
Well, yeah, how much? Yeah, length of the string and
Hour's
all
piece
that.
of string, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it varies significantly. I think I've known some projects where people are on easily accessible land that they know really well, and they maybe can use a quad bike, and they're doing 10 to 20. You know, that is feasible in a day. I know some areas in Dartmoor where they're lucky to get through 2 or 3 in a day. You know, it's terrain based and so on and so forth.
Yes.
So that's where we try and that's what we want farmers and land managers to be doing it, who know the land and know the practicalities of managing it, because actually,
Yeah, getting
you know,
around.
that's kind of an important part of it, really. But yes, it's know your own piece of land and kind of know your own limits, I think probably is the sensible approach.
We did some analysis of it in part of the survey, in part of the test and trial, and it averaged
Yeah.
between 9 to 15 per half day was the across the 3 different commons we did. So
Okay.
yeah, it's
That's useful. Thanks. Yeah.
so
So half a day. Yeah.
it's about
Like you said, very variable, but
I mean, Craig might be able to say how many he's been doing, because we've got people here who've done it. So William and Craig, I
yeah.
mean, they're the people who've been doing it. I don't know whether, Matthew, whether you want to comment.
I think with the on Derwent Common, when we did the habitat assessment questions as well, I think I was
I think we
it
had
35?
33.
Yeah, 30 something points in about a day and a half, roughly. But if it's
Okay,
really
so that,
easy,
yeah.
you do a day, no problem. Yeah.
Also
That's
worth
useful, thank
noting that it very much depends on your phone battery as well, because it does drain your phone. So if you need, I know that one of ours went out and only got 4 done before our battery had gone dead.
So take
Oh, right. So maybe
take a pack, one of those packs.
Yeah, as I say, a charging pack as well next time. Then maybe
Yeah.
Okay, that's useful, but they're good tips, and that's a good insight. Thank you. So hopefully that's given the person who asked that
Also,
question
just
a little bit of
to
insight.
add, Joe,
Yeah,
as well,
go
that
for it, Claire.
it syncs as well pretty rapidly, so that you don't have to worry about loading everything to the app back at home unless you've got a good Wi-Fi. It does sync on the spot depending on where you
on the
are.
spot.
So you don't have to wait or load it or worry about that. It does sync well.
Does it as you're
all
going
of your
along?
maps at the same time.
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully that's given people a bit more of an insight into the practicalities. One final comment. Thanks, Tamsin, for just adding that to the end of the Q&A. Back to the hedgerow question and the Dartmoor Hill Farm project. So we're looking at something around that at the moment, a survey app to survey the hedges on Dartmoor. So maybe look out for that, especially if you're down in the southwest. Right, it's 5 to 9. I've got a couple of little jobs for everybody to do, if you don't mind, before we leave. Well, firstly, I'm just going to thank everybody who's been on you for listening and all our attendees this evening and sticking with us and asking some really interesting questions. Maybe a little virtual round of applause now for all our people who've spoken and contributed this evening. So I have got Vicky, Will, Craig, Matthew, Claire, Kira, Julia and Owen. What a crew. Thanks ever so much, all of you, for contributing this evening and making what I think has been a really interesting webinar. So we've just got a couple of polls. Here's one. If you wouldn't mind just answering that would be great. Always useful for us to have a little bit of feedback. So if you just wouldn't mind pinging in your answer to that'd be super. Pleased to see that people have found this useful. Quite a lot of people have found it useful. That is great. We'll give it another, should we go up to 50 seconds? Oh, you've ended it. Even better. Right. So that's that one. And then I think we've just got one final poll for you, if you won't mind just clicking on around using the tools. Is that right? There we go. So this is just a question around whether you might want to find out more about any of the tools we've talked about. Just to give us a little bit of an insight. I can see the SFI app and the farm-led habitat assessment were neck and neck a minute ago. It's quite interesting, isn't it, watching it as it goes up and down. You must have done a good job there, William, Craig and Matthew, of inspiring people with the farm-led habitat assessment. I'm sure you did. You did. It's great. That's fab, thank you. Any more for any more? Should we end that one now? Thanks, everyone. That's just really interesting to see what you think you might follow up on and what you found most useful tonight. All right. So I think that's it from us for this evening. We have got another webinar coming up in March. We'll put the date out. Look out for that. That'll be sort of the last one of this kind of winter series, if you like. And we'll send out the recording of this. So if you want to watch back, or if any of your colleagues or friends have signed up today and weren't able to make it, they'll be able to watch this. We really appreciate you joining us. We hope you found it useful, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Take care. Bye.